will be a full and a very enjoyable evening. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to call Mr. Yam to take over the session and to share his slides and to teach us on what this whole topic is about. So Mr. Yam, can you continue?
Oh, thank you, Paul. Welcome again. Kumusta? Selamat patang. And ni hao. So glad to have us all here. Now I want to move to the slides. Can you very quickly type on your chat, what is one expectation you have for tonight? Can you do that? One expectation that you have for tonight. And many of us come from all kinds of backgrounds. Nurses, right? Those who are in psychology, counseling, social work, and you work with people who are very different. And sometimes it could be, it's good to have a different perspective, different view about how we can help others differently. And many of us are students also. How do things work? While you learn things in school, and there's so many theories, so many practices, role plays, but you want to find out from those who are practicing and how do you actually do it. So, and then we have got parents who are here with us. Parents who say, look, I have this thing about my child, my son, my daughter. Would there be something that I can find out from tonight's talk about mental health that can help me, that can help my children, or even to help the people that I'm trying to assist in my family? Can you very quickly just write down one expectation you have while I get the slides and share with you?
Right, just feel free to type onto the chat itself. So Finas said, I expect to engage with others, learn something new, and enjoy this experience. Wonderful. Janeline says, hello, we are about to put on acute psychiatric unit. Hope I can learn more here. Wow. And then Norma said to deal with her anxiety. That's fine. That's good.
Yeah.
We want to provide practical help.
Yeah.
Mian says, common and effective skills that can apply to public.
Yeah.
Well, that's very good. Right?
So we have a lot of expectations, right? It definitely is important when we attend anything. We should have an expectation rather than just come and then we have no idea what's going on, but it's good to have something in mind. But you can see the title, Mental Health, Myths and Grandfather Stories, Tips for Yourself and Others. So the whole idea when we talk about mental health, it is important really. Some people think that it's almost fundamental, primary, before we even talk about other psychiatric or psychological disorders or problems. But tonight's focus is not so much addressing those psychiatric issues, because mental health has a bigger umbrella that focuses not just on what some of these emotional or cognitive difficulties are, but it helps us to understand there is something else called mental health that we should pay attention to. Now, so this is where we're heading now. Along the way, I want to tell you where we want to end, how we want to land. By tonight, when we're done, you should have a good idea as to what mental health is. Better still, how this applies to the questions or the situation that you're in, especially when you think about what you're doing, when you are working with other people, they have expectations. How do you communicate these expectations to them that's helpful for them and also to help you to be effective in what you do? So what is this really when we talk about um, mental health? So mental health, World Health Organization 2022, they say, look, we talk about mental health, it's about this state of mental well-being. And this helps people to deal with stresses of life. And in the process, to realize their abilities, they can do something about it. To learn well and work well and to contribute to their communities. Well, this is pretty interesting, isn't it? The way they have said it. Now, the way we can think about this is also not so complicated. Is actually mental health is about how we think, how we feel, how we act as we deal with life in our dailiness. You wake up in the morning and then you're thinking about things to do. Others, they say, no, 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 no. Before I sleep, I really have thought about it already. So there are different ways that we deal with daily lives. And then the other thing has to do with making choices, making decisions. Now that assumes that we are able to put together information that is helpful, that helps us to think about what needs to be done. And then we look at what is important, what are the priorities, and we make decisions. But not just that, it has to do with people around us, whether family members or whether these are colleagues or these are people that we have in our classes. It's about people around us. So how do we relate with them? Now, these are quite, we say these things in a way that seems so simple. We can be surrounded by people who are difficult, who are very demanding. Then what do we do? So mental health seeks to explain and maybe answer some of the things that we have in mind. So what do we do? How do we think about this? I have certain feelings, but I cannot express myself. Or there are things I want to do, but I'm not sure. There's so many choices I can make, but I am so confused. So mental health helps to unpack some of these things. When we talk about this, let me see. What you have is, you have basically all the whole slide with you, right? Okay. And what we see here is the focus for tonight, myths and grandfather stories. And some of you are wondering, how come got no grandmother stories, right? Definitely, I think there are some things about grandmother stories are also just as valid because the focus can be very similar. But tonight, we talk about grandfather stories. When we talk about myths and mental health, myths are essentially things that we say, things that we hear about mental health that is inaccurate, that can be harmful. Why? Because it helps us to make decisions and choices. We say things arising from an inaccurate understanding of the mental health situation. What about grandfather stories? So grandfather stories are stories that we hear from not just grandfathers, right? But we hear from other people who are usually older than us. And when they tell us what's happening, they tell us about something that they have experienced through their lives, something that have actually encountered before. And they found the experience to be so important, so invaluable, that from there they came out with certain lessons that they've learned. Now, so you compare the two, say, okay, now how do they relate with mental health, right? Then for myths, we talk about myth because they are really inaccurate and sometimes they say things differently, and they can simplify mental health issues to a point where it doesn't recognize actually mental health can be a little more complex. And because of myths, we can become we have a certain mindset. We start to stigmatize. We start to stereotype. We start to put a label on a person or something even before we get to understand what's going on. So we jump to conclusions, right? So of course this can be harmful, and this is also very misleading, not helpful at all. But in contrast, when we talk about grandfather stories, this is where you hear something from someone older, could be your Lola, your Lolo, your Pa, and you hear these stories and say, oh, that's so interesting. And then they're not just telling you stories, they're telling you about something that was very meaningful for them. Right? So wisdom, hope, practical advice. And yeah, the stories are very interesting. There are little different characters, and then the storyline can be very unpredictable. So it captures our attention. Now, see, all these stories, what they convey to us, I think simply that mental health is not so simple and straightforward. Can be very, very complicated. We look at a person with dementia, for example. The person lots of times would forget certain things, forgot whether he has eaten or not, and keeps asking, "Oh, have I eaten? Oh, where's my next meal?" and things like that. But at the same time, this person may also have got other mental health concerns. He may feel very lonely. He may feel like when he talks to people, and other people just ignore him. And he struggles with remembering names. So it's not just um, the mental health problem that the person is dealing with, but it's also other mental health concerns. So they're not always the same, but so this is where we see differences. Grandfather stories provide us with insights. Oh, aha. So those moments, they are important learning points. And we acknowledge that through those stories, it helps us to connect with a lot of times our culture. And many of us come from different cultures, from Philippines, from Indonesia, from Malaysia, Singapore, elsewhere. And where we live, our cultures could be very different from other cultures around us. So our cultures will look at mental health differently. So as we go along, let's see how we can unpack this. Now, we come to a point, you say, okay, can you tell me exactly, give me an example, what are these myths and grandfather stories, right? So I'm going to tell you three different stories that gets us going and help us to unpack what exactly are these. So along the way, I'm going to pause and I'm going to ask you, can you type your responses on the chat? What do you think this is? Right. So this can be very interactional, and some of us want to maybe say something. I'm not sure we can unmute and let you say that because everybody will be saying the same thing at the same time. But here goes. So when we talk about myths and grandfather stories. Now, this is where I like for you, after I tell you the story, I like for you to think about it. What are the myths about this story that seems to be so obvious to you, right? Or when you hear this grandfather story, what lessons are there? What are you hearing from this story? Stories sometimes are not very obvious, or they tell you exactly what this is. So you have to say, now, what is this lesson? So this is where our journey begins, right? So as I tell you first story, and I like you to think about, firstly, what are the myths? And secondly, what are the grandfather story lessons that you think you're learning? So let me try the first one. Let me see. Oh, you don't see any animation, do you?
No, no, I don't.
No, okay, let me just pause here for a little while. And while I've been telling you about myths and grandfather story, let me double check my slides. And I'd like for you to maybe pose a question or two about maybe something that is related to you. And along the way, let's see how we can respond to your questions at the same time. Okay, so we'll pause here for a while and let me check my slides. Okay, where am I? Okay. Okay, let me stop share first, and then for you to very quickly post on the chat some questions that you may have at this point. Something that as I was telling you about myths and grandfather stories. There's some questions that you have in mind. So can you help me to do that while I get my double check on my slides?
Is there anyone that have anything that you want to type into the chat?
Okay, let's give this a try again. I think this will work. Okay. So, do you have any questions so far? No. Okay, okay. I think so attentive until you no time to write down questions. So these are the three stories I'm going to tell us tonight. The story of the broken mirror, the Bayanihan spirit, and the Wayang Kulit. So the three stories that we talk about, and along the way, I'd like you to think about what myth is this all about, as well as is the grandfather's story behind this, right? So let's go with the first one. The first one has to do with the broken mirror.
Mr. Young,
Yep.
your slides are not presented carefully. Can
Ah,
you can you can you yeah.
okay, okay. So this is the one that is showing differently. Yeah, okay, I got it. I got it. Okay. Okay, how's it now? It's better now, huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
continue.
So this is the story of the broken mirror. Now this story is about a young girl, and she had a very difficult situation in a relationship. So what happened was the relationship was so difficult that it broke her heart. And she went away and she didn't want to talk to anybody. She looked at the mirror, she saw herself, she was so angry, so upset with what has happened. She took the mirror and she smashed the mirror on the floor. The mirror broke into pieces, fragments, pieces of mirror all around the room. She walked out of the room. Sometime later, she came back. And she looked at the mirror, broken pieces. She stared at the broken pieces, the fragments, for a long time. Then she bent over, one piece at a time. She picked up the fragments, one piece at a time. And over time, she put the pieces together. Some missing pieces, but she put the pieces together. It was a broken mirror, but the pieces were together. So I'm going to pause here a while and ask for you to kind of think about and respond, right? Type in the chat or, or on a piece of paper. What are the things that you hear in this story that could be a myth? Why do you do something so stupid? Why are you so angry, right? Why do you just walk away? And what are some lessons from this grandfather's story? So I'll pause there for a little while and then hear your responses. Maybe look at the chat. What do you have?
What are some myths? What are some grandfather stories that is represented by this story that Mr. Yam has just told us?
Yep.
You can type into the chat, or you can actually unmute yourself and just say it out. Anybody? Mr. Yam, I think you can continue.
Okay, first someone mentioned about I would like to gain and learn more about mental health and how I can apply the proper intervention to the patient. Now, if you hear a story like this, uh, what do you do? How do you understand this story? We try to see from the client, the patient's point of view, the child's point of view, and A mirror represents something that reflects who the person is. And when the mirror is broken, tells about the heart that is just shattered, very disappointed. And in this case of this girl, she was so angry, and that was what she did. And someone mentioned when angry, you must not say or make decisions abruptly. Oh, that's a good point. Don't make decisions abruptly because you are angry. And when you're angry, you may not think clearly, right? Usually, the way our body functions is you may not get enough oxygen in the brain, and consequently, your thoughts may not be very focused because just insufficient oxygen in the brain, and then you are also feeling a lot of stresses at that point in time. So making decisions at that point can be you may not want to very quickly make those decisions. And there was someone from the Philippines, right? Ronelyn, who mentioned the broken mirror represent the girl herself. Yeah, it is true. She was broken and she put herself back together once she accepted her brokenness. Well, that's a good point. So, what do I have? I want to kind of share with you myths. The past is the past. Forget it. Move on. Let bygones be bygones. Don't cry over spilled milk. But actually, this could be a way sometimes we want to minimize, want to push away, sweep this under carpet because we don't want to deal with it. It's just too painful. We don't want to be reminded. But in terms of mental health, I think accurately, we should encourage people to maybe address these issues sensitively. Sometimes people need more time to think about what has affected them, but they need to be encouraged to look at the problem because it will affect their mental health. Now, next time they have a similar situation, what would they do? Bring more mirrors. They will keep doing that, but this doesn't help. Now, when this person said about, how can I apply the appropriate intervention? I think one way is to encourage reflection. Many of us in counseling, psychology, social work, parents, for example, students, we are told that one of the best things we can do is to ask questions. Asking questions is an important aspect of intervention. It helps you to understand what is going on behind the behavior. It helps you to understand why the person is affected in such an emotional state. So addressing past hurts involves, someone mentioned self-acceptance. That's true. And a lot of people, they struggle with mental health because they cannot accept what has happened in the past. They cannot forgive themselves or they feel very guilty something like this has happened to them. What about grandfather lessons? Grandfather lessons, emotions and feelings, yes, it's about talking about them. So this girl, by piecing the pieces of mirror together, is a way of confronting and looking at the situation and trying to think about it. What has happened? Along the way, recognizing that, like the mirror, it takes time to put the pieces together. It needs time. I mentioned self-compassion here. We can be very hard on ourselves. We can learn to be very unforgiving. We will not let ourselves off the hook. Or we tell ourselves we deserve it. Why? Because we're so stupid. But when we talk about those emotions that affect us, that result in very strong responses, anger, throwing things, sometimes hitting at people, uh, we need to have that compassion that recognizes that we don't always have good self-control. We don't know how to. And I'm sure we struggle with those kind of situations where we lost control. And self-acceptance, accepting that there are things that make us not just very upset, but because of the upset, we would tend to take things in our own hands. We would tend to just let go and demonstrate our frustration and our anger. So this is something that that doesn't help. So mental health alerts us to a few things like self-acceptance, recognizing that dealing with emotional pain takes time. Let's move on to the second story. Are we doing okay? Are we doing fine? Okay, yeah, good. Let's move on. What about the next story? The next story has to do with the Bayanihan spirit. Now, this is something that our Filipino friends will be so familiar with, right? I don't know whether, I think this is still happening in the Philippines. The last time I visited was that was after, the typhoon Haiyan. I was in Cebu, I was in uh, Tacloban, and here and there I saw people putting their houses back after the storm. Walls were broken down, roofs were just blown off somewhere else. No more furniture, no this, no that. So this is where I thought the Bayanihan spirit teaches us so much about what's happening in our culture. This is a picture that some of us may have seen before, but it's just amazing. And literally, in the Philippines, the lolo will tell their anak, the grandchildren, that you know what, last time in the villages, in the kampongs, this is what we'll do. When you want to move, you just tell your neighbors. You tell them when, and they all come together. And they will come together and they will help you to move literally the whole house from one point to the next point. And this kind of spirit, we still see this around. I think when you think in terms of the Philippines, it could be just normal happenings. There's a wedding, there's a community gathering, and everybody comes together. The Bayanihan spirit. People coming together because it's community. Now, what are some of the myths and grandfather stories, lessons here that we can learn? Some will pause a little bit, maybe hear some responses, especially our friends from the Philippines, because this is so cultural, so part of the Filipino community that is generous, that is so giving. So pause a little bit, and I want to look at the chat, right? See how many of you are responding so that we can look at the myths here in this story.
Feel free to feel free to type into the chat or unmute yourself to raise your answers here.
Okay, just another minute because I need to go on to the third story. For friends from Philippines, is it true? This Bayanihan spirit, is it true? Is it still happening? Yes, it is from Diane. Yes, yes, Chloe. Yeah, everybody. Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, it's still happening. It's so Filipino to do something like that. You just assume, right? Yes, up until now, yes, it's so true. Right. So I'm going to move on and share with you what I have written here in terms of myths and grandfather stories, right? You know what a myth here has to do with asking for help. You ask for help because you are useless. You ask for help because you are no good. So we don't ask for help. It's a sign of weakness. We don't do that. But you see, I think this is where it's a myth. That's not true. That's not true. So I wrote here accurately, mental health issues are common and normal. So when something like this happens, what do? We talk to people, we ask them to help us. So when we do that, mental health is not a problem. It's something that's quite normal. There are situations when we are angry about ourselves or with people around us. Also, it's not uncommon when we are very depressed, sad about certain things. Certain things happen in our office, and then we felt that we were not informed, or when people didn't tell us, we felt let down, we get upset, we get sad. And similarly with anger, right? We feel sometimes when things are done and it's not fair, we get angry because it's not fair. How come you've been left out? How come your friend who hasn't done anything is maybe being promoted, being allowed certain opportunities? But seeking help recognizes that we are not alone. We are interconnected. Right? Whether we live in our own families, we live in a Baguio, Kampong, we are all interconnected. So seeking help without fear of being judged as weak is a sign of strength. What about grandfather stories? Grandfather story, what's that? It's about community support. We don't have to face problems on our own. Social belonging. When you do things together, you feel belong. You feel that you are able to do something, help somebody. And when you need help, somebody is willing to help you. And what about paying it forward? That's a very interesting idea, especially in Western culture. Sometimes we pay forward because it's about helping people first. And then because people are able to receive help from you, chances are they will reciprocate. They will turn around, they hear that you are in trouble, you need help, and they are more than happy to help. Right? And a lot of projects today on social goodwill and all that is just born out of this whole idea that when we help someone else, actually it contributes to our own mental health. The fact that we are able to help someone gives us not just a good feeling, but this sense of that I've been able to help somebody. Okay, third story. Let me go to the third story. Third story here. It's about the wayang kulit. You see this in Malaysia, you see this in Indonesia. I'm not sure you see this in the Philippines, maybe in the islands, like wayang kulit. Now, what's wayang kulit? Huh? Wayang kulit is all about wayang. It's about shadows. It's about using puppets to tell stories. And you have a person who is very good, is in charge, he's got dalang. He's a person who comes up with the stories. And he gets a team and he puts together different characters. Some of these characters are bad characters, some are good characters, right? So these characters, they would in the story, the good, the evil, and what happens at the end? The good wins. At the end, there's so many lessons you learn. So beyond the entertainment, beyond the sounds, the music, there's so much that yes, you're seeing. There was this grandfather story about this old man who was telling his children, his grandchildren. He said, "You know what? When you go and watch the wayang kulit, you can hear the different music. You can watch the screen, the shadows, the different characters that are acting in a certain way." He says that this is how life is. Life can be in a certain way. Sometimes in the beginning, it seems to be very good and very simple. But like the story that Ryan Kulit, the story becomes a little bit difficult. You find certain people acting in a certain way and they're taking advantage of others. So this old man says, the Ryan Kulit, when we watch these shows, this shadow plays, we are actually learning about life. Life can be very complicated, not so simple and straightforward. So, what are the myths and grandfather stories here? Anybody? Uh, yes, I'm trying to look at some of the responses that are coming in, right? Anybody who has written anything, type in the chat about wayang kulit. Have you seen wayang kulit? I'm sure many of us have seen this before, right? Okay, I don't see anything in the chat yet. I think you must be very busy eating. Or tonight you're very shy. So let me move on, right? And let's see where we go from here. Uh, so wayang kulit, some myths when we talk about this mental health issues, whether it's about anxiety, and people don't like sometimes to say, oh, why you so uh hanged up? Why you so frustrated? We don't talk about these things in public. So in fact, many of the Asian cultures that we have is you must be in very good self-control. So when you're angry, you don't show that you're angry. You must keep a straight face. So when people look at you, oh, they think, oh, everything's under control. So we don't talk about it. But actually, when we look at the situations that we face, or situations that we're not sure about, like what do you do when your child doesn't want to go to school? What do you do when your colleague is so he's just up, pacing up and down, and he's so disturbed, and he tells you, I've not been able to sleep last few nights. I'm so worried, and when I get worried, I can't eat. So you hear stories, you hear about anxieties, you hear about this and that, right? And well, when you look at the wayang kulit, the characters also they very much in the story. They're looking for guidance. They're asking for help. So they're often given to point to certain directions where they will ask maybe some mystical person for help, a deity for help. So seeking help is normal, natural. Even for those who are very strong, people who are very strong, they have their advisors, right? So they also have help. So it is not that when we have problems, when we need help, we shouldn't bring this up. We should talk about it. So instead of hiding our problems, expressing and sharing with others, help us to deal with them healthily. Now, what about grandfather's stories here from the wayang kulit and all that? Okay, what we find here is, the dalang who works with his puppets many, many years, learning how to not use puppets, but understanding the music, understanding that, when he moves the puppets, there's certain delicate movements that help to express the puppet's maybe emotional struggle. All this takes time. So what this means is, like the dalang, when we are dealing with difficulties, we need to slowly work through, not expecting things to be resolved overnight. So getting help, assistance without feeling embarrassed. What about the shadows and lights that you see in wayang kulit, right? Well, it's really about emotions that are so varied. We ourselves, we can be very happy, and next moment, don't know why we are just tearing, we are upset, we are very disappointed. So our emotions can just go from one to the next and the next and the next. So wayang kulits to the shadows and lights help us to understand that shadow play is not so straightforward. The story is the complexity. So when we look at emotions, our emotion may not be so straightforward. Even we say, I'm very angry, but it's not, very clear. Actually, even if we are angry, what is behind that anger? And of course, because of its complexity, our emotions affect the way we think and the way we act. So three stories to help us to unpack a little bit about what myths are, as well as grandfather stories. Right, I'm gonna pause there a minute, and then maybe we can interact a little bit before I go on to an exercise. Right, so we'll stop share here, and then hear from us to our chat or questions that we have. Okay, I'm going to look at my chat and see uh, how many have written something. Okay. Anybody? Oh, you've been very quiet, huh? Would really like to hear from our friends from Indonesia. When you watch the Wayang Kulit, what kind of what do you think about characters, about the storyline, about the the setting up of the Wayang Kulit? Okay, now we're not sure about this so far. Anybody? Any responses before I move on? Okay, let me move on. Let me talk about another area. What is there an exercise that we can use when we talk about mental health? One particular concern that people have in mental health is our hesitancy to do something. We're not sure, so we don't do anything. Or because of past experiences, we find that we have not been able to deal with a situation, a problem that we have. So I'm going to share with you. There's one way that we can work things through. Now, this is called okay, this is the grandfather stories. I want to move to this section. Uh, oh no, I have two things to debunk the myth. There are me two case studies for us. Right now, I'm not sure how you're responding because you're very quiet. So I'm not sure how to do this or whether we should do this or not. But you need to do something. At least I know from your end, you are thinking about it, or you are agreeing with me, or you are not agreeing with me. So I need you to respond. All right. So please help me on that. Now, case study. Now, debunk the myth, right? This whole talk is about myth, right? And also grandfather stories. Now, mental health has to do with really unpacking, unraveling things that can be confusing, misleading, outright wrong. Now, if you don't deal with this, then our mental health will be affected. The way we think, the way we talk, the way we act will be affected. So, this is a story about a family. So Mary and John, they are brother and sister, and they saw their father sitting in the corner of the house after dinner. And they were just turning around and they saw father in the corner. Now you look at this picture, this elderly gentleman sitting there. It's hard to tell what's going on. But the brother and sister was saying that, well, he has been very quiet. Didn't talk to anybody for the past weeks. Look at him, no eye contact, he just walks away. He has not been eating much also. When we buy dinner for him, when we sit down together, sometimes he doesn't eat, he just walks away. And he has trouble sleeping. I hear him waking up in the middle of the night. Sometimes I look into his room, I see him sitting on the bed. Turning to John, Mary said that the father will just snap out of it. Don't worry. In another few more days, whoop, he'll be okay. John said, yeah. Maybe he's just getting old. Because of his old age, we just leave him alone, right? So now, when you hear stories like that, and then you hear how John and Mary are responding, what do you think would be some myths in terms of mental health that we should be alerted to, especially how John and Mary are talking about the father? He will step out of it. It's just that he's getting old. That's why he's having these problems. Okay, I'll pause for a moment, and I'd really like you to kind of put in one or two. Oh yeah, somebody has just put thank you, Nathan. Any individual will just eventually step out of it. That's a myth. You just step out of it, like switch on, switch off. Oh, mental health is not like that, right? That's a good point. And then Janeline says that every individual has a unique way on how to deal with issues. So just because this elderly gentleman is sitting down on his own, and then he's having problems eating or sleeping, and could be an individual way to deal with issues. Okay, I can agree, right? But at the same time, when we look at this myth, right, do they really snap out of it? Do people just snap out of depression? Do people just snap out of stress, depression, anxiety? Do they do that? Or they have a panic attack, they just snap out of it? So I think there is this tendency to simplify, trivialize mental health concerns, right? While people do not just snap out of it as if everything is under control, right? They are in a certain situation because they are thinking about an aspect of their life. It could be a relationship that they are struggling to understand. And this struggle leaves them awake at night. And this concern could be quite worrying for this person. So he cannot sleep. He's just thinking about it. Doesn't feel like he has an appetite. So good point, really. Then what are some of the things that we can look at what we're saying here? Right? We talk about myths, we talk about facts, common mental health issues that we can relate with. Yeah, sometimes we can be very dismissive about people dealing with emotional um, situations. They get angry, we say, oh, come on, stop behaving like this, right? Get out of here. Or, or when suddenly we get angry, we just storm out of the house, we slam the door. Now, these are behaviors and emotions that underlying all these behaviors. For someone who's observing, it's good to understand what's happening. Obviously, something has happened that would result in this person acting, emoting in a certain way. What can we do? Some of you are into intervention. It's always about what's behind this story, what's going on. Otherwise, we'll be speculating, we'll be jumping to the conclusions, right? So, questions to ask this, ask Mary and John is, when you look at your dad, you say that your dad has been like this for a few weeks. Have you spoken to him? Have you asked him what's happening? And how did your dad respond? Did he have difficulties talking about it? Or he was just confused about certain things that has happened in his life? So this could be ways that we can respond, intervene, right, for some of you in a way that's helpful for the situation. Now, one more case study I have, right? This has to do with this is a Chinese story, Kung Fu Master, right? He was just walking in the garden with plants all over, left and right, and behind him were his disciples, his followers. So they were following him, and they wanted to know what will the master, the Kung Fu Sifu, say next. So suddenly the Sifu stopped and he turned around to bamboo leaves, bamboo gum, the stems and all that next to him. And then after a moment of silence, he touched the bamboo gum, the stalk, huh? And then he turned to his disciples. You look at this, I can see that some of these are very strong. Some old, some young, but I can see that when the wind blows, some of them remain stiff. Others, they tend to blow in the wind. So he was telling them about something they were just seeing. Yeah, it's true. It is true when the wind blows. The leaves move, the stems move, especially the thinner ones. And the Sifu stopped and said, you know what? Many times when we are confronted with a storm, when we have a problem situation, and some of us say, no, you have to be strong. You have got to stand firm. You must be you must be able to confront and deal with this on your own. But the Sifu said, it is actually the strength of the bamboo that when confronted with strong storms and strong winds, they will sway.
and it will bend. He said, bending and swaying is a sign of strength, not the bamboo that is rigid and unmoving. It is a bamboo that's able to move and sway around. So that's an interesting story. I'm sure the disciples were very impressed. Just the bamboo come. And there's so many stories about life, dealing with storms and dealing with difficulties. Now, what are some of the lessons here? Right, I'm gonna pause a moment. I'm just wondering if some of you will just put in the chat. Some of you still putting in your comments, observations from the old man's story, John and Mary. What about this one? This one, the Kung Fu master, the Sifu. Okay. Do not resist, go with the flow. Okay. Acceptance of the situation, which requires you to respond, right? So the Sifu said this is about flexibility. This is about having a different perspective. It's about seeing things from the other way, not just always from your own perspective. Ken, thank you. You said true strength comes from the ability to adapt and to practice dialectical thinking. That's a very good way to put it. Right? Has to do with when you look at situation and then you try to look at it from maybe other perspective. Dialectical is just something that we can unpack this in a pedagogy, a way to learn, right? Uh, Jean said, live in the moment. Never mind the storm, just stay in the moment. You sway, you move, you know. Some people find it very important, very useful to do that. Instead of worrying about this and that, they just stay with the moment, right? I think that's a good point. Someone said recognizing pain and negative emotion helps you to be more strong and resilient, Myra. That's very true. Very true. When we recognize pain, instead of just dismissing it, or we just minimize pain, or many of our families, Asian families, when our children fall, we tell them, oh, it's not painful. Get up, especially boys, right? Get up and run. Don't cry. So we are actually teaching them indirectly that when there's pain, it's not important. You don't have to recognize it. Why? Because you're a boy, you're a man. Huh? Some of these myths, huh? And so on. We should learn how to adapt. I think when this seafood talks about this bamboo, he's talking about being flexible, talking about being adaptable. And I think it's a good point. And that's a good question from Renee. How do myths and misconceptions about mental health contribute to stigma in society? Well, when we talk about, let's say in this case, when we say, oh, when there's storm, you should be strong. You should be able to take care of yourself. Now, when we talk like that, now the misconception here is that all of us needs to be strong. All of us need to be acting in a certain way. So when we expect people to behave in ways that demonstrate their strength, to demonstrate their ability to confront the storm. So when we talk like this, now what about other people who cannot? So they are stigmatized. If you cannot, it means that you're weak. It means you're useless. So when we have myths like, oh, you must be strong, so it contributes to this stereotyping, especially when we think about older people, right? When they're older, we say, oh, you're useless, right? You are no longer useful to society. Everything you do, you take so much time. So what happens to society with this kind of stigmatization, this ageism, right? Society becomes very intolerant to people who are seen to be weak. Society is less accepting of people who are having difficulties dealing with situations in our lives. Why? Because our myth, our misconception here is they are useless, they are weak, so we shouldn't pay attention to them. So that's one way we can look at why myths and misconceptions about mental health, they don't help society. When you say stigma, stigma is something that negative. It places a negative label on something that is not correct. So let me move on. I think you mentioned really, really good points. Now, what are some of these things, right, that as you talk about it? Now, I didn't ask you to do some of these things like finishing the sentence. Maybe that'll be interesting. No, we have more time to do that. Huh? So I'm going to come to a point where I want to kind of wrap up and give us an idea as to why are we talking about these stories and then the case studies and all that, right, about mental health. Now, I'm wondering if you might be interested in this exercise before I wrap up. It's about, so what do you do? How can you help someone? How about some of us who say, I also have similar struggles. I don't know what to do. This could be one way where we can help ourselves, tips for ourselves, right? And tips for others to help other people. So it's about I can, right? It's about this mental health idea about I am not helpless. I can do something about my life. I can do something about the difficulty that's confronting me. So I can, right? Can, C for challenge, A for actions taken, and N for new beginning. And what do we have here? We said, oh, what is challenge? It's about describing the key challenges you face with your mental health. I cannot concentrate. I am so stressed out. I'm so frustrated. So this could be ways to describe a challenge. Why do my teacher always say that I'm so slow? How come my spouse always complain that I'm not paying attention? I go and see the doctor. Doctor says there's nothing wrong with you. I feel terrible. I feel that I cannot sleep. I feel that I'm always irritable. Now this can be an example. So can you give me an example? So I wrote something here. Once I was very discouraged. When someone came by and said, hey, you're not very clever. You're not smart like your brother. Actually, I think you're quite stupid. Then we start to think, yeah, maybe I'm stupid. Compared to my brother, he is always the first or second in class. And then not only that, he has got so many friends. I am useless. I'm not good enough. Now, this affects our mental health when we think like that. It, it is a way of sometimes telling ourselves that because of what people said, we have this situation where we describe ourselves as not good, not good enough. What about A for actions taken? What did we do? This is a point when something happens and you say, oh, I can do something about it. Right? Actions taken. What did I do? Right? Now you're getting it already. So when a situation and when you're not doing something about it, then you know what? Actually, the mental health problem doesn't go away. In fact, it stays. And sometimes when you allow this to stay, it gets worse because you're just mulling this in your mind. And the more you think about it, and the more frustrated, angry, upset, not with other people, with yourself also. So the turning point that prompted you to seek help, what actually happened? So my example here is, you know what? A friend who noticed I was feeling down sat next to me and asked if I was okay. So it was after a while before I shared with this person and said, you know what, I don't feel like talking about it, but because you are asking me, I felt about not being good enough. I felt shame. I felt I'm nobody. Nobody likes me. But this person encouraged me. Hey, you know what? Actually, what they're going through is very common. Why don't you speak to someone they can trust? So he went to talk to his uncle. So that was a turning point. Something that actually helped him to overcome his mental health issue. And what happened after that? Now, it's good to actually recognize that because you've done something positive, something new has taken place in your life. Point out one positive outcome you have experienced. Right? So this is the way I would conclude this. This is a activity, right, that we can do. That you know what, actually, as individuals, we are different. When we start to compare, then we get into a situation where we have expectations. If I can do it, how come you can't do it? And so on and so forth, right? And you feel that after a while you have to measure up to what people are expecting you to do. So when you do that, then you forget that actually we are all different strengths, different abilities, and we respond differently given the situations that we're confronted with. Now, up to this point, we after the case studies, we kind of practice. Now, I'm not sure we have enough time to practice. I look at the time. Some of you are very hungry already. So let me start to wrap up for you and then hand the time back to Paul, right? Now, this is one way to wrap up. But at the end of the day, what are we talking about? Mental health. Why is it important, right? And why are we focusing so much on some of these things about stories and myths and all that? So let me tell you three. The first one has to do with self-care. Sometimes you look at this, oh, it's so obvious, right? But no, sometimes we don't realize we need to take care of ourselves first. And why are we not doing this? Now, some cultures, when you focus on yourself, you say, oh, you're very selfish, right? You're very self-indulgent. Everything is all about you. But mental health, about self-care, has to do with you need time to deal with things that affect you. Why? Because mental health is about not just how you feel, think, and do. It also has to do with your relationship with other people. Secondly, this has to do with the social support that's around you. The stories from the Philippines, why I call it, and they tell us that we don't live alone. Although today a lot of people, especially some of the elderly, they are in situations that they find themselves very lonely. They find themselves facing the blank wall. Family has no time for them. So it's important to start to build and nurture social networks. So when we're confronted with a situation, a problem, we don't have to deal with it on our own. But at the same time, we're able to engage with other people. We look around and there are people who need help. We prepare ourselves so that we're ready to help other people. And finally, number three, seek help when needed. Right? Sometimes we think that seeking help is a waste of time. People don't understand, or maybe it's also important. We tend to just procrastinate, we delay, and over time, the situation can become a little bit more harder to handle, right? Or become very tired. We are unable to deal with the issue. So asking for help is a sign of strength, right? And I think this is a closing slide for me. And for some of you are thinking about, okay, after hearing so many things, you want to come to conclusions. Now, these are some conclusions that I suggest for us. And number one, mental health matters. Because you're not in the right state of mind, you won't be able to live life that is life that you want, life that's fulfilling. You will not be able to contribute to the meaningfulness of those around you. So mental health matters. Not just the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you act, the way you relate with other people. Mental health is complex and multifaceted, many layers, many layers. It's not just one situation. There are a lot of situations. Sometimes our background, sometimes our growing up years have helped us, make us more sensitive to certain things that people will say, and this can be a trigger to our response to mental health issues. And we shouldn't be too quick to simplify and trivialize. Oh, it's nothing. It could be something that needs attention. Mental health builds power in our connection. When we are mentally, our well-being is able and strong, we are able to relate, connect with others. We are able to be more resilient. Why? Because our threshold, our tolerance for dealing with problems are stronger. Not that we have all the solution, but we know what to do. We know how to think about some of these issues, and we know how to get help. We know how to help someone else. And professional support is crucial too. And these are people that many of you here, you're trained to recognize, to help, you're trained to describe, intervene in situations that people on their own may not have an idea as to what the problem is. And even if they have some idea, they may have no skills to deal with it. Even with skills and good ideas, sometimes they have an attitude issue. I don't want to talk about it. I don't care. You know, the kind of thing. So mental health, I think the key thing here is it's important. It affects us. It begins with us. So begins with us, take care of ourselves. We can take care of the people that we care very much around us. So thank you very much. Over to you, Paul.
Thanks, Mr. Young. I wonder whether anybody have any questions, burning questions you have for Mr. Young? Any questions? Yes, Nathan said yes. What's your question? You can unmute yourself or you can just type it here. Okay. So there's a question that come in from somebody who is in the live session, because we do have Facebook Live that's showing this video, showing this lesson. The question is for Mr. Yama, how do we respectfully deal with some overly religious individuals, like some pastors or priests, who undermine or even dismiss the importance of mental health? You know, we acknowledge the importance of spirituality, the faith, but we cannot deny that it's not as simple as that. Just pray, just have faith. All right? So how do we deal with that? That comes from Nathan. Mr. Young?
Thank you, Nathan, for the question. I think it's a very good question. We have a situation where someone who is talking to us and giving us advice or trying to help us, and this person is a religious leader. So how do we respond to that? We say, oh, please don't tell me what to do. But I think you have put this in a way that is a bit respectful. I think that's a good posture. Um, and there is some research done about how spirituality contributes to mental health. Because spirituality deals with situations, questions that are a bit different. So when I have a situation where, let's say I'm very anxious about my job. I'm very anxious about a relationship. And this spiritual leader say, oh, just pray, don't worry, and do this, do that, right? So our immediate response is maybe this religious leader doesn't understand what's going on, right? But I think firstly, I think it's good to acknowledge, to thank the person, say thank you for your advice or spiritual advice. But as I think about my situation, would you have maybe, so this is about asking them, right? Do you have any ideas how I can maybe integrate what you're saying, the spiritual part of it, to my current situation? So what I'm saying, don't just ask me to pray, help me to understand how this works, applies in my situation. That could be one way to engage, not push them away. But another way, when we think about all these spiritual issues, like I said earlier, they tend to focus differently, especially about meaning and purpose. So when something happens, we usually think about how do we solve this? How do we deal with this? But religious or spiritual perspectives tend to focus on the meaning of this situation in our lives. Why would we be anxious? Is it because of something that I realize in myself? I don't have confidence. I don't like facing the same problem over and over again and not having ability to deal with them. So yeah, so then the religious, the spiritual part of it helps me understand what's going on, the meaning behind. Now, first purpose, right? Why am I going through this? And maybe not the first time, right? So you think about why is this? What could be a purpose? Is this something that I am learning that I need to deal with this and not walk away? So I think these are some of the considerations I think about. Firstly, how to dress, and secondly, how people who come from religious or spiritual backgrounds, they may have other considerations for us. But like what you say, just don't push them away and all that, right? So thank you for saying that. Paul, should I just go on to the next one, or you want to point me to another question?
I think there's a few good questions here, which I think
Yeah,
we should
yeah.
really take time. How do you deal with loneliness, especially for elders who with no support system? How do you
Yeah. This question is from Genia. This is a tough one, especially when we are in a situation where our elderly uh, family members, they don't have support. And sometimes even their siblings, no one they talk to them. They just want to leave them alone, Or, the children, the adult children, they are so busy, they have their own families. They're not able to do this and this. And consequently, the old person finds himself or herself all by himself, herself. Loneliness. Loneliness is a situation where you find that you are almost not just lonely, but loneliness is you don't have any social relationships. You don't have people whom you can relate with. You don't have people that you can talk to and hope that they will be able to empathize with you, suggest what you're doing, and help you to kind of look at what's happening. It's difficult. So I don't know. Only one of the ways I think about is like, there's a circle exercise where you think in terms of, okay, I draw circles around this lonely person. Now, who are the people that I can, looking at this person and looking at what I'm trying to do to help, can I put names of people in the inner circle, outer circle, right? One or two or three names. Now, after putting down the names, I said, okay, now this person A, what is this person A very effective in doing? Oh, this person is doing this, and what this person has done is he's very caring. He wants to be involved, right? But he hasn't got a lot of time. So I kind of put a name, I talk about what they're good at doing. Then the next thing is, now how can I talk to them? So I think when I arrange it in that manner, it allows me to look at a way of dealing with this situation where this person is alone and no support system available. Right? Now, in this circle, I may also need to look at what are some of the community support that's available. Social workers, how about government? Right? Would there be a family member who's a little bit more aware, more supportive? So I think it's going through circles and identify people and looking at what they're good at and unpacking and talking to them. Right along the way, maybe updating this lonely person that these things that we can kind of look at, and maybe this person can offer you some suggestions. But that's one. But the other thing, when we talk about someone who is very lonely, also has to do with something about this person that results in him being very lonely. Some people are not just introvertish. Some people, they just don't want to talk. You can sit next to them in 2-3 hours and they won't say a thing, right? So so it's about engaging, finding out how this person is, and I don't know. Sometimes you talk to people who are very lonely, maybe they're not affected at all. Maybe they're very happy all by themselves, right? So that's a very interesting question. I don't have a very direct answer, but I see this from different perspectives. Some helpful, some maybe you need to find out more about this. This is person who's elderly.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Yam. One last question that we'll answer. 1 minute. Okay. Some
Okay.
people avoid discussing mental health of judgment. Okay. Can we normalize and make this conversation acceptable? 1 minute.
Renee, thank you for asking that. I think it begins with us. So long as we are starting to talk about it, we are actually modeling. And as you talk about it, means someone else who's listening to you say, actually, that's a good point. The person may also do exactly what you just did. Begins with you. The next one, the next one, the next one. Then you normalize it. Thank you.
I will open this time for final questions from anybody. Okay. Thank you so much. I am seeing a lot of thank you from Edna, from Nathan, Nomi, Ivy, Nidia. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Yam, for doing the talk as well. Okay, it is something that is prepared. Different cultures, Filipino culture, Indonesian culture, and so forth. So thank you, Mr. Yam, for your time. And it leaves me to say thank you, everybody. Please expect an email from us with the last few slides so that you can register. But do take note that this registration for the 50% voucher or the free 2 segments of a course is only for attendees of this course, not for people that register but did not attend. Okay, so thank you so much. Appreciate that. Good night, Sheila. Good night, to Mary, Maya. Good night. Okay, so please feel free to leave this room. Thank you.